Hey guys, it's Ashton from Pretty Much Geeks here, and I've spent the last few weeks fully immersed in the latest entry in the world of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I was super interested to see how much the series has changed since having not properly played an Assassin's Creed in almost 11 years when I used to obsessively play Assassin's Creed 2 on my Xbox 360. Over a decade later and now on my PlayStation 4, the first thing I noticed was how massive the world is. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is almost intimidatingly huge. The game starts in Norway, but your time here is fairly brief. Well, it's meant to be, but I am so easily sidetracked and overwhelmed by games with this much freedom that it took me almost 5 hours to leave Norway for 9th century England, so you can imagine my surprise when it was only at this point that the title Assassin's Creed Valhalla came across the screen, prompting the actual start of the story. Yep. This game is insanely huge, not just in terms of map size, side missions, and the main story, but in terms of the amount of hours completionists could actually sink into the game. You could easily find yourself spending 60 hours plus in the seemingly endless world of Vikings, castles, and murder. The story follows Viking raider Eivor as you take on England in an attempt to be the most revered Viking warrior in the land. I enjoyed playing as the badass female Ava and became so attached to her that I felt no desire to change to the male character throughout my journey. However, it definitely leaves room for another playthrough to see how different the journey feels through the eyes of a male Viking.
I have come with the hope of meeting Eivor, the great warrior of this clan, if such an audience is possible.
Eivor's relationships with the NPCs are all unique depending on how you play, and I found her an incredibly engaging and endearing protagonist.
I hate long speeches.
Only when you're not giving them.
As flawed as she is flawless, emotional while stoic, Eivor is constantly in the shadow of her brother and torn between following his orders while trying to forge her own destiny. I have to admit, I found my first 8 hours so overwhelming. I'm not a massive RPG guy. I find the scope of them far too intimidating, and where my spare time to play video games is not always huge, having to be patient enough to learn how to enjoy a new game can be quite off-putting. New players may find the learning curve a bit steep. The game takes a while to find momentum, and especially if you are new to the series, I recommend being patient because it can feel like a bit of a slog to get into. Having said that, I'm so glad I stuck to it. The world is gorgeous, vast, and rich. The characters are interesting and compelling, the landscapes varied, and the gameplay was exciting and engaging. Like all RPGs, your ability to customize Eivor is detailed and the options are many. From weapons which affect your fighting style right through to the enormous skill tree, every aspect of your Viking can be modified and evolved to suit how you want to play. For example, I spent my first few hours playing with a massive double-handed axe. However, as the game progressed, I soon learned the importance of being able to parry and block with ease, so changed my playstyle to a much smaller axe and shield. But there are so many options that you can constantly experiment and change how you fight. Perhaps you want to dual wield axes, maybe you want to use a mace and a shield. Experimenting with what combination of weapons suit how you want to play keeps the options on how to play the game super fresh and interesting. However, once I had landed on my playstyle, traditional axe and shield with a quick-fire bow, I kept with this setup as the more I upgraded the weapons, the less I wanted to change and try other weapon sets.
All my pieces are good, but that one's very good.
As the game progresses, you build up your village and you can build things like tattoo parlors and get hairstyle changes to cosmetically change the look of your Viking. The amount of this kind of customization is so insane. Personally, for me, I care little for the cosmetic approach to gaming, but for those who are interested in this, you have so much choice. The combat is what you might have come to expect from modern RPGs. The enemies come in a huge amount of varieties, from fairly easy to strike off minions to much larger and stronger enemies who will really test your ability to dodge and parry. Every character has a weak point that is revealed whenever you draw your bow, and taking out these weak points is imperative for defeating some of the stronger enemies. Break down an enemy enough and you can execute them, and these are all different depending on the character and their weapon, as often you finish them off with their weapon. These animations are bloody amazing and always super satisfying to watch, especially when an enemy has been particularly difficult to defeat. The fighting is brutal and every battle feels like it presents new challenges and encourages different approaches. I must admit, I am terrible at sneaking missions, and even when the game wanted me to be a stealthy assassin, I always just ended up getting caught and hacking and slashing my way through the enemies. I liked this approach, I found it more fun, and I liked that the game didn't force me to play in a certain way, so if I wanted to just run through the front gate blowing my horn and fighting everyone on a suggested sneaking mission, the game was like, alright buddy, you do you. Now, I can't stress this enough, there is so bloody much to do in this game. Outside of progressing on the main story, you can climb, you can ride, you can sail, you can flight with villagers. Flighting is basically an old school form of rat battling. You can raid villages for resources to build up your own city, you can play a dice game, a drinking game, you can feast, you can search, you can loot, you can swim, you can hunt. Honestly, the scope of stuff is absolutely insane. Everything you do works towards your overall objective of being the best, most badass Viking in all the world. Unlocking new areas always felt rewarding, and synchronizing the new parts of the map and then doing a leap of faith off the edge of the lookout point felt satisfying no matter how many times I did it. Storyline-wise, the story is really interesting.
How does it end? They all die.
All the characters are engaging and believable, your relationships with said characters are well constructed and intriguing, you have some control over conversations and decisions, which affects parts of the story and how it unfolds. You can choose the kingdoms and kings that you pledge your allegiance to and in what order, and you can even decide who you spare and who you slay. All of this provides an experience where you truly feel like you were in control of the developing story and that you are in charge of Eivor's destiny. Eivor is an extremely likable lead character, and I truly enjoyed taking her on her massive journey. So, what didn't I like about this ridiculously mammoth game? Well, I am sad to say that Assassin's Creed Valhalla is buggy as hell. Even if I put aside the 5 times or so that the game made my PlayStation blue screen and crash entirely, within the game itself there are so many bugs. Sometimes it was something small, like my horse just randomly chasing me for 10 minutes, or me pushing a door that I needed an NPC to help me open, and them just standing there staring at me like a moron. I could laugh those bugs off. But unfortunately, often the bugs were much more game-breaking. For example, there was a mission where I had to choose whether to keep the peace or slay my opponent, and at this point in the story I felt the need to keep the peace. However, after I made that decision, there was a cut screen, and then suddenly my opponent was randomly dead on the ground. All the NPCs were cheering at me to fight him, and I couldn't progress at all. This was just one of the numerous times where I had to reload a previous save and make a different gameplay decision in order to progress. For a title as massive as Assassin's Creed, the amount of bugs was borderline offensive, and having to reload previous saves so many times or be forced to change my approach or choice was really frustrating. Overall, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is an impressively immersive, overwhelmingly massive, and extremely fun and engaging addition to the world of Assassin's Creed. With an awesome story, incredible visuals, and so much to do that genuinely feels like there is endless hours you can sink into this game and a million different ways to play it. Although it is let down by the amount of glitches and bugs it throws at you, it is still well worth the commitment and patience required to play, and is an ultimately rewarding and enjoyable experience. Make sure you check out our website and our Facebook page for more updates.